Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're tackling something that is literally rewriting the rules of global trade. Decarbonization, it's really no longer just a corporate buzzword or some PR talking point you can toss around. For businesses deeply embedded in global supply chains, if you don't have a credible, measurable climate strategy right now, you're simply out of the game. Okay, let's dive into this. Just to wrap our heads around the sheer scale of this movement, let's look at the numbers. They are staggering. We're tracking a massive 40% surge in corporate climate target setting for 2025 alone. We're talking about over 10,000 businesses globally that now have officially validated targets. And you know where the absolute epicenter of all this explosive growth is? Asia. If you're an exporter or a manufacturer operating there, setting science-based targets isn't just a nice-to-have anymore. It's your fundamental ticket to play in the modern economy. So here's our roadmap for demystifying all of this today. First, we'll look at the SBTi gold standard. Second, why your business actually needs it. Third, we'll be decoding scopes 1, 2, and 3. Fourth, we'll walk through the 5-step validation process. And finally, navigating the V2.0 update. All right, starting with Section 1, the SBTi gold standard. So what exactly is this organization everyone keeps talking about? Well, the Science-Based Targets Initiative, or SBTi, was founded back in 2015. It's backed by absolute heavyweights like CDP, the UN Global Compact, the World Resources Institute, and the WWF. And their primary goal? Stop the greenwashing. They exist to enable companies worldwide to set emissions reduction targets that are strictly aligned with 1.5-degree climate science and the Paris Agreement. Basically, they take those vague, feel-good, eco-friendly ambitions and force them into hard, measurable, scientific math. Now, here is a really critical distinction that actually trips a lot of people up. SBTi target validation is not a traditional ISO certification. It's not some standard one-size-fits-all checklist where everyone just gets the exact same framed certificate to hang in their lobby. Instead, your business has to roll up its sleeves and do the hard work of developing custom targets. The SBTi then steps in as the ultimate auditor, rigorously validating those specific goals to make sure they legitimately align with global climate science. Moving on to Section 2, why your business needs it. Let's shift our focus to the undeniable business reality and the competitive advantages of actually getting validated. Top-tier corporate leaders are totally done with empty promises. Just look at Mads Nipper, the CEO of Ørsted. He puts it pretty bluntly, saying, "We need bold but credible net zero plans. Align your company's climate strategy with what is required by science." And that right there is the new baseline for corporate leadership. They are actively demanding credible action. If you don't have the math to back up your green claims, global partners will literally just take their business elsewhere. And this brilliantly illustrates the hard data behind that reality. The return on investment here is undeniable. Look at this. When companies validate their targets, 91% see a positive overall business impact. 95% report enhanced reputation. 86% accelerate their decarbonization. And, absolutely crucially, 76% see increased investor confidence. Validation isn't just about saving the planet, though that's great, obviously. It's really about protecting your capital, managing transition risks, and driving strategic cohesion across your whole organization. Okay, Section 3, decoding scopes 1, 2, and 3. We've got to tackle some of the technical hurdles here, specifically breaking down where emissions actually come from. Because before you can reduce anything, you have to know what you're emitting, right? You need a greenhouse gas inventory. Think of it in 3 distinct buckets. Scope 1 is your direct emissions, so the fuel you're literally burning in your own company cars or factory furnaces. Scope 2 is indirect, like the electricity you purchase just to keep the lights on. But Scope 3? Wow, that is the absolute behemoth. It covers your entire value chain, from mining the raw materials all the way to a customer throwing away your packaging. For most companies, Scope 3 is like the underwater portion of a massive iceberg. It usually makes up the vast majority of their total footprint, and honestly, it is notoriously difficult to track. And here is the ultimate takeaway for you. If you supply larger brands, your Scope 1 and 2 emissions data literally becomes their Scope 3 compliance. Even if you run a smaller SME, those global giants desperately need your data to meet their own strict mandates, things like Europe's Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism or the CSRD reporting directives. You're a crucial link in their chain. And if you can't provide science-based data, well, they'll inevitably just replace you with a supplier who can. Let's transition to the operational phase in Section 4, the 5-step validation process. Hopefully, this will relieve some anxiety by mapping out exactly how a business actually gets this done. The roadmap is actually remarkably clear. Step 1, you commit by formally registering on the SBTi portal. Step 2, you develop your greenhouse gas inventory across all 3 of those scopes we just talked about. Step 3, once you know your footprint, you build your targets using approved scientific methods, like the absolute contraction approach or the sectoral decarbonization approach. Step 4, you submit those targets to SBTi services for independent validation. And Step 5, you disclose, publicly announcing your targets and transparently reporting your progress every single year. Now, when you're actually building those targets, the requirements are incredibly strict. You've got to set near-term targets, looking at a 5 to 10-year horizon, alongside your ultimate net zero target, which means reducing emissions by 90% or more by 2050 at the latest. These targets absolutely must cover at least 95% of your Scope 1 and 2 emissions. And remember that massive Scope 3 iceberg we discussed? The rule there is if Scope 3 makes up more than 40% of your total footprint, setting a specific, strict reduction target for it is completely mandatory. Which brings us to Section 5, navigating the V2.0 update. The regulatory landscape is updating rapidly, and we need to talk about how this impacts your immediate planning. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how V2.0 marks a massive paradigm shift from just ambition to actual real-world implementation. Releasing June 11, 2026, it introduces some much-needed, flexible rules for SMEs and companies in lower-income countries to make the framework more accessible. But it also makes it crystal clear carbon credits are treated as a complement, not a substitute. There's no buying your way out of this. You still have to do the hard work of cutting your own emissions. To help relieve a little compliance anxiety, let's map out this transition timeline. Throughout 2026, the current V1.3.1 framework still fully applies. In Q1 of 2027, a transition period begins where you can submit under either version. But mark your calendars. By January 1, 2028, V2.0 becomes strictly mandatory for all new submissions. The overwhelming advice from experts: act right now under the established V1.3.1 framework to get ahead rather than waiting around and scrambling when the new rules take over. Because, let's be honest, the technical gap here is vast. Trying to do this alone and setting targets incorrectly can lead to a rejected submission, wasting months of your time. Our sources strongly emphasize that independent consulting and targeted training are essential to successfully bridge this gap. You really want to get expert support for your Scope 1 through 3 inventory and those complex target calculations. Partnering with localized experts, folks like ISC Global, Duc Lung Services, and Staunchly Vietnam, is highly recommended to save time, optimize your costs, and ensure you successfully pass validation on the very first try. And that brings us to the end of our roadmap. We've covered the what, the why, and the how of the Science-Based Targets Initiative. But I want to leave you with one final provocative question to really reflect on. Is your emissions data truly ready for SBTi validation? Because the global market isn't waiting. The transition to a net zero economy is happening right now with or without you. It's time to get your data in order, seek out that expert consulting, and start your net zero journey today. Thanks for joining us for this explainer.